with all of the churches in the neighborhood, how do you think those churches can go back to serving the community that with they're in? And I say that because one of the things that I've always heard, and sometimes I find myself counting here in the Atlanta area when I drive through predominantly African-American neighborhoods, is count the church and count the liquor store. Mm-hmm. And they're usually on the same number, right? Mm-hmm. If I see 7 liquor stores, I'm gonna see 7 churches. How do you think that the church can start to serve the neighborhood as a whole to not really save it, but to start us on the right track?
Okay. Again, to go back to your leaders. When we were growing up, we had people like Dr. E. Edward Jones, Dr. C.C. McLean, Harry Blake, Pop Martin, Murphy Hunt, my pastor, Don Edwards, and our former pastor prior to him, the late Reverend J.W. Spellman. Those are people that were activists in the community, that people that saw that we control what happens in our community. If anybody can be the voice for your community, the church has to be that voice a lot of times. We stop being our voice because we let other agendas get us. But we have to start using our voice again. But people, I don't know, and I can't speak for everybody, and I'm not speaking for everybody. I'm speaking for me, because I only can be accountable for me. And that's the key word, accountable. Some people have lost that accountable, because again, how do you get people in your church? You got to capture them around your church. But if you want to stop stuff from coming into your community, especially for the church-wise, we have to do like those fellas did. They said, hey man, we don't want that in our community. And we got the people to bag it saying they don't want this in our community. There's always power in numbers, but it takes one to initiate the fight. It's like, you remember, I don't know if you ever did this. We used to go camping with Mothers Against Drugs when we was kids. We'll go to Arkansas and you take a little pebble and we're trying to skip it across the water. Well, it don't take but one pebble to make a ripple in the water. Sometimes it only takes one to start the ripple effect in the water. Now just think about when you decide to make the ripple, you're gonna have to, keep throwing it, but the ripple continues on out till it passes where you see the ripple still goes, You see it stop eventually where it started, but it still goes out, And that's what we have to become as a church. We have to be that ripple again. We have to make the initiative to say, you know what? Hey, we want to do change. We want to see better for our community, and you wanted to voice it when it's not popular, Voice it when it's not what we say is politically correct. Because only thing that's politically correct for me is what thus says the Lord. That's what's politically correct for me, because again, America was built on in God we trust. We have to get back to in God that we trust that everything to happen. If we want the world to change, we got to put it back in God's hands. We want our community to change. We all got to come together and put it back in God's hand. Why? Because 2 Chronicles 7:14 says, if my people, which are called by my name, would humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then God says, then it's conditional. Then I will hear from heaven. I'll forgive their sins. I'll heal their land. It's going to take us to make those changes. All believers. The change starts with believers. the change for the world, the change for the city, the change for our churches, it starts with the believers. Because God made this promise to the believers. If you do this, because a lot of times we stop praying, we stop seeking God because we're trying to chase the dollar. We find ourselves falling into some wicked ways at times. He said, but if y'all would do this, in turn, I will do this for the land. There's no other God that makes that kind of promise to people that has been true to his promise. If you look at segregation, you look at the civil rights movement, it's because they decided to do what God asked them to do and stay on to the promise and hold true to the promise of God. And a lot of them didn't see the change, but now we are living in the change. We're living in the promises. Now, with us living in the promises doesn't mean that we don't have our own struggles that we have to face. So now we have to do the same thing that they did to set the promise up, not in our lifetime, because we might not see that. We might not see total change in our lifetime. But we can start investing it in our children seeing the change. But it starts with us. It starts with our commitment to do it the way God says do it, the right way. Love your neighbor as yourself. Treat each other right. And the church has to get back to preaching that. Preaching Bible, not prosperity. Preaching Bible, preaching Jesus, preaching servanthood, preaching salvation. I'm tired of feel-good sermons because it make me feel good for that moment, but when I leave there, I can't apply that feel-good no more. I still have to face life. And we have to go back to telling our community, hey, I know you're struggling, but hey, we fall down, but we can get back up, And that's the role that the church has to play in the community, because a lot of folk have fallen down. A lot of people have you done got me into a sermon, man.
I know, man.